Welcome to Sports Law in 5 Minutes. Today I'm going to talk about whether doping in sport should be criminalised. Criminalising doping could mean, for instance, that it would be a criminal offence to use one of the substances listed in the code set out by the World Anti-Doping Authority, WADA. Although at this point it should be noted that some of the drugs listed by WADA are already illegal under English and Welsh criminal law. This issue raised its head again last week when the reigning London Marathon champion was found to have tested positive for a banned substance. The marathon world record holder Paula Radcliffe spoke out on the topic and said she was in favour of criminalising doping in the main because the cost for cheating should be much greater. There are three primary arguments. Firstly, it will act as a further deterrent for athletes not to dope. Secondly, potential jail time is a much more just punishment than the sanctions that are currently in place, i.e. competition bans. And thirdly, there is the paternalistic argument that imposing criminal sanctions on drugs which can cause significant harm to an athlete's body is protecting athletes from themselves. Furthermore, it recognises the harm doping can do in wider society, particularly when considering the public perception of competitive sport. The first two arguments I outlined above are, in my mind, emotional arguments, that the law should be there to right a grievous wrong. This is perhaps why so many athletes support criminalising doping, because they feel most cheated by doping. The arguments for criminalising doping is also in a part a reflection of the despair felt by the public and athletes alike when there is a seemingly endless stream of athletes found to be doping. So in response to this despair, people reject policies of more of the same and look for dramatic solutions, either criminalising doping or, on the flip side, full-scale legalisation. And I think we should be wary of getting sucked into this narrative. Everyone who loves sport hates doping, but we need a rational, unemotional discussion about what is actually going to work. The deterrent argument, often used to support harsher sentencing in the wider criminal justice system, is a familiar one. It sounds good, but how effective would it be in doping? If we think about the current consequences for doping, there is an immediate loss of a way to earn a living, a competition ban, combined with a public perception of which could result in long-term difficulties for future career earnings. For instance, I don't rate Dwayne Chambers' chances of having a long television career. I'm not saying there is not an argument for putting harsher bans in place, but regardless of this, the stakes are already high for athletes. So if you're already at a place with a certain mindset that you're prepared to take these risks and use performance-enhancing drugs, is the possibility of a criminal sanction going to deter you anymore? The deterrent argument is further undermined when you understand how the prosecution in criminal cases works. Doping bans currently operate on a strict liability basis, i.e., if you have the drug in your system, you are deemed guilty unless you have evidence which proves otherwise. In a criminal case, this is flipped on its head, and the burden of proof is on the prosecution to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt, so the chances of conviction would ultimately be pretty low anyway. It is also worth noting that in January 2016, Germany introduced a law which athletes, if they tested positive, could go to jail for up to 3 years. As of December 2016, there had been no prosecutions. The international aspect is also problematic and could affect the enforceability of criminal sanctions. For instance, if a Russian athlete dopes in the UK but leaves the country, would that athlete be extradited for prosecution? And if one country extradites and another doesn't, that creates its own inconsistencies. Further, will an athlete just avoid countries with criminal doping laws? And for any real criminalisation of doping to work, there has to be an international consensus. I'm also not really sure the paternalistic argument adds anything. Would criminalising doping change the dynamics of drug taking? Would athletes suddenly carry out a reassessment of the risks they are taking, or just continue regardless? Furthermore, there are issues about what drugs would carry out criminal sanctions. As currently, some of the substances on WADA's list are perfectly legal. Do they become illegal? Are there exceptions where in some circumstances the use of these drugs is allowed and do not have criminal sanctions? Whilst, as those working in the field would point out, I've only touched on and no doubt oversimplified the debate, I think this video highlights that criminalising drugs would not be the golden ticket in the fight against doping, and is fraught with a variety of issues. To criminalise doping would be in large part to accept that all that could be done within the current system has been done, that it is as efficient and as well run as it possibly can be, and that still didn't work. I don't think that's the case. So whilst it's not as headline grabbing, I wonder whether significant regulatory reform and a more robust enforcement of the laws already in place may be the first step to a better anti-doping strategy. If you want to find out more about both sides of this debate, follow Gregory Ioannidis and Jack Anderson on Twitter. They are both sports law professors. And that concludes my video. Thank you very much for watching.